Daf Yud Ches. So we're going to start the Mishnah Beishamai Oimrim, which is at the end, towards the end of Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. So we're coming back over here to the halachas of Shabbos.
All participants are muted.
So we come back to the halachas of Shabbos, and we begin with this Mishnah that will discuss Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel machlokes b'negei to a person that begins malacha before Shabbos. He sets something up to go before Shabbos, and the malacha is going to get done on its own on Shabbos. Is that allowed or not? Beis Shammai yoimrem, Beis Shammai say, ein shoyrin diyoi v'samonin v'karshinin. You may not soak ink, v'samonim and other ingredients that are used for a dye, the karshinin, and also soaking different ingredients that are used for the food for an animal. So these are various different things that a person is soaking, the ingredients of the ink, the dye, or for the animal. And the issue with soaking them on Shabbos is that this is a malacha of kneading. It forms into a paste, or it becomes like a thicker substance, and you're kneading on Shabbos. But the point is, Beis Shammai says, even if you began soaking it before Shabbos, you're not allowed to leave it there, that it should continue soaking through Shabbos, only if it's going to soak up and it's going to finish the process before Shabbos begins. And Beis Hillel matirin. Beis Hillel say this is allowed. As we're going to see in the Gemara, the basis of Beis Shammai's opinion is that Beis Shammai's opinion is that there's a concept called shvisas kelim. Just like a person has to rest himself on Shabbos, and there's psukim that also say that your sheircha v'chamercha, your ox, your donkey should also rest on Shabbos. There's also a halacha of shvisas kelim. Your kalim should not be doing a malacha on Shabbos. So over here, when he fills the kalim with the ingredients to do the kneading on Shabbos, according to Beis Shammai, that's forbidden. Your kalim are doing the malacha for you on Shabbos. Beis Hillel disagrees. Beis Hillel says if you set it up before Shabbos, you can let it soak on Shabbos. Similar halacha, Beis Shammai Yomrem, ein neisnin unin shel pishton l'toich tanur. You may not place a bundle of flax into the oven on Shabbos, and this is done in order to whiten this flax that's going to be used later. So you put it into the oven. So you put it before Shabbos and you leave it there on Shabbos. Only if it's already heated up by day before Shabbos. You're not allowed to place wool. Good. Into a vat on Shabbos, and when you want to dye the wool, so you can't place it into the vat to dye it on Shabbos. Only if it already absorbs the color fully before Shabbos. So of course, Tzoiveya is one of the Lamates Malachas, so it has to be done before Shabbos. Beis Hillel matirin. Beis Hillel say that it's allowed. Shammai Yomrim, another halacha, Beis Shammai says, ein person mitzudois chaye v'oifes v'dogim. You may not spread out any nets to capture an animal, fish, or birds, unless it's being captured before Shabbos by day. Beis Hillel matirin. Beis Hillel says you can prepare traps to capture on Shabbos. Before it's going to capture on Shabbos. You prepare the traps before Shabbos, and then it's going to trap on Shabbos itself. So all of these halachas in the Mishnah that we learned so far is all this machlokes regarding shvisas kelim. Beis Shammai holds you may not set up any keli in a way that the keli does a malacha on Shabbos, and Beis Hillel says it's not a problem. So the Gemara weiter, the Mishnah weiter, that is Beis Shammai Yomrim, another halacha regarding what you're not allowed to do before Shabbos, and this is not related to shvisas kelim. This is another halacha related to a guy, that when a guy does something, it may seem like he's doing it for you on Shabbos. So Beis Shammai says, ein moicherin l'nochri. You're not allowed to sell something to a guy on Friday before Shabbos. You're not allowed to help him load his donkey before Shabbos. And you're not allowed to help him lift a package that he's going to carry. Unless this is a guy that could go to a place close enough that he's going to get home before Shabbos. Otherwise, according to Beis Shammai, it looks like that you were using him, you're sending him to deliver something for yourself on Shabbos. Okay, so therefore you're not allowed to do this before Shabbos. Beis Hillel matirin. Beis Hillel says it doesn't matter. You can load the guy, you can sell him something before Shabbos, even if the guy is going to be taking it on Shabbos, it doesn't matter. Next halacha, Beis Shammai yoimrim ein noisnin oires la'avdon. You're not allowed to give any of the hides of an animal to a tanner on Shabbos to prepare it on to work it on Shabbos. V'loi kelim l'koivis, and no clothing to a cleaners, nachri a goyish cleaners, ela kadesh yasu miboid yom, unless he can prepare it and do the job before Shabbos. Ubekulan. Now, the opinion of Beis Hillel, ubekulan, in all of these cases, when you're giving something to a guy to work for you, to do a cleaner job on with clothing, in all of these cases, Beis Hillel matirin im hashemesh. Beis Hillel says you're allowed to give it to the guy as long as it's before Shkia, you're allowed to give it to the guy. Well, there's a shtickle discussion regarding Taisvis Shabbos. You have to keep in mind Taisvis Shabbos, that's a little bit before Shkia. The Mishnah uses the term im hashemesh. The Mefarshim discussed this, but the point is Beis Hillel holds you can give the cleaners to the guy right before Shabbos. There's a huge discussion about this in Shulchan Aruch. When you get to giving the guy the cleaners right before Shabbos, we'll see Mitzvah Shem based on the Gemara later on Daf Yutes. Zog the Mishnah weiter, Amar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Noyegin Hayu Beis Abba. The custom was in the house of my father, Shahayu Noisnim Keli Lovan Lekoivis. They would give white garments to a guy, to a cleaners. Nachri shloisha yamim kaidem l'Shabbos, 3 days before Shabbos. So Rashi says that the kli lavan takes longer to wash, and it could be a job that will last for 3 days. So they gave it early enough to be sure that the guy did it before Shabbos. Shav and Eilu, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree shetoyanin kairas Beis Abad, that you may prepare the kairas, the beams that are used to press in an olive press, v'igulei agas, and the round pieces of wood, the heavy pieces of wood that are round, that are used to press in a wine press, that may be put right before Shabbos, and it continues pressing it on Shabbos. In these cases, Beis Shammai is maided to Beis Hillel that it's allowed. And the Gemara later on Daf Yutes, and tomorrow's Daf in Mitzvah Shem, it will explain why in these cases Beis Shammai agrees, even though l'chayr it's doing a malacha on Shabbos. Zok the Gemara starts with the first case that it mentioned in the Mishnah, that you're not allowed to prepare the ingredients of an ink or dye before Shabbos, and it's going to mix and it's going to stay there over Shabbos, to soak over Shabbos. So the premise of the Mishnah is that when it soaks over Shabbos, it's a malacha. It's a malacha of megabel that you're kneading on Shabbos. And according to Beis Shammai, the kalim are doing the malacha on Shabbos. That's the issue. But the thing over here is, the Gemara is going to discuss, he's just adding the ingredients. The ingredients are soaking up on its own. He's not mixing it, he's not kneading it or mixing it manually. It's happening on its own. So from our Mishnah it comes out that when you mix the ingredients and it soaks up on its own, that's a malacha. And it's not a malacha only when you manually mix it. So the Gemara wants to know who's the source for this chiddush. Man tana nesinis mayam l'dyai. Zui Shri Asan, who is the Tana, who is the source of the Chiddush of our Mishnah, that when you mix the ingredients in the water for the ink, and it soaks there, this is the malacha. It soaks up on its own, even if you don't manually mix it. This is the malacha of kneading on Shabbos. Rav Yosef Rebbe. This follows the opinion of Rebbe. The Tanya, we learned in Abraisa, Echad Noisen Esakemach, in a case where one person put flour in a bowl, and another person came and added water into this bowl. The person that added the water is chayiv, even if he didn't mix, he's chayiv, because it mixes on its own, and the very fact that you added the water, that is the ingredient needed for the flour to mix with the water, you're chayiv. Divrei Rabbi. This is Rabbi's opinion. Rabbi Yosi says, or the other gears over here on the side is Rabbi Yosi, but Rabbi Yehuda says, and chayev ad sheyagabel. You're not going to be chayev for kneading unless you actually mix it, unless you knead it. Just mixing the flour and water is not a malacha.
Just putting the water.
Just putting the water into the flour is not a malacha. You have to actually knead it. So our Mishnah that says it is an issue of mixing the ingredients before Shabbos, because then on Shabbos the keli is doing the malacha that it's soaking up without you manually mixing it, follows Rabbi's opinion. Amalei Abaye challenged Rabbi Yosef. V'dilme, perhaps at kan lekam Rabbi Yosi. When did Rabbi Yosi say that you're not chayiv for kneading unless you manually kneaded the dough? Ela bekemach, when you have flour and water. The bar gibelhu, that's something which is kneadable. When you knead it, it helps, it mixes and it forms it into a dough. Avul diyoi, if you're talking about the ingredients that's placed into water for ink, the lav bar gibelhu. It's not something where you're mixing, it doesn't paste together, like it doesn't become a dough in the same way. So you're manually kneading it does not really help with that in the same way. Perhaps over here Rabbi Yosi would agree that you're chayiv just by mixing the ingredients and it mixes and it absorbs on its own. Sagt the Gemara, no, we can't say that this is true. The Gemara now brings another braisa where we see Rabbi Yosi's opinion. The Tanya, in a different braisa we learned, one person puts ashes, and somebody else comes and adds water. The person that put the water is chayiv. Divrei Rabbi. This is the opinion of Rabbi. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, you're not chayiv unless you manually mix it. Now we're talking over here about ashes and water. You can't compare ashes and water to flour and water, where when you knead it, it's kneadable. It becomes like a dough. Ashes and water, it just mixes, maybe becomes a shtickle paste, but it's definitely compared to the ingredients of the ink in our Mishnah. And still, Rabbi Yosi argued and says that you're not chayav for kneading unless you manually knead it. Zog the Gemara, but maybe we could still argue, Vidilma, perhaps, my Efer, sometimes, even though Efer is usually ashes and Afar is earth, but sometimes it's interchangeable in the lashon of the Tana. So maybe when it says Efer, Afar, he really means earth, the bar gibelu. It's something that is kneadable. You could make a mortar out of it that's used in building. So it is kneadable, and therefore Rabbi Yosi held the only chayiv if you actually knead it. Zok the Gemara, no, we can't say that, because Vatanya Efer, in one braisa we learned the machlekes of Rabbi and Rabbi Yosi regarding Efer, ashes, and Vatanya Afar. And in a different braisa we learned that they argued regarding earth that was mixed with water. So we see it's two separate things. But the Gemara doesn't accept this. Midi Gabi Hadodi Tanya, was the case of Efer, ashes, and the case of Afar learned together in the same braisa, that it's clear that Efer is not Afar and Afar is not Efer. It's two separate braisas that were taught by two different people. And it's possible that in the braisa where it says Efer, it means Afar. And not it means Afar, in other words, earth, and not ashes. And that's the only reason why Rabbi Yosi holds that you have to knead it, because it's kneadable. Earth could create a mortar, so it's kneadable. That's why it has to be kneaded. But otherwise, in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yosi, according to Abaye's opinion, maybe agrees to Rabbi. The ingredients of the ink is not kneadable, and therefore, even if you just place the ingredients and it absorbs on its own, that's the malacha of kneading on Shabbos. So the Gemara now the Gemara brings a braisa that brings other examples of cases where a person begins something before Shabbos and the malacha gets done on Shabbos on its own. You may open up a channel of water into a garden from Erev Shabbos, the water that should come from a spring, and it passes through this channel into the field on Shabbos. Right before it's dark. And the water will fill the entire Shabbos. Another case, mugmar tachas hakelim. You're allowed to place mugmar. Mugmar, we had this already many times. We had it in Gemara and Brachos also already. This refers to incense that a person burns, and they used it to bring a good smell to the clothing. So they prepare this incense. It's a havara, it's made with a fire, and it's prepared before Shabbos, tachas hakelim, and it's placed below the clothing. You hang the clothing above it, and that gives a good smell. And it will go, the process will continue the entire Shabbos. Another case, gofres, you can take sulfur and you burn sulfur. What's the point of this? Tachas hakelim. This is used under kelim. Rashi explains what this is used for is when you have silverware that has decoration in the silverware. If you ever look at the becher lamashal that has a certain decoration of a flower or whatever it is, sometimes it has these, the decoration has these black indents. Where is this black? How do they make then at least these black indents? It was with this sulfur. The smoke of the sulfur made these black indents, so you should see the nice shape of the decoration on a becher. And it'll sulfurate the entire Shabbos to create this nice decoration on the silver becher. You're allowed to place a patch on your eyes before Shabbos, and it'll be there the whole Shabbos, even though on Shabbos you're not allowed. On Shabbos, if you're using it with the cream and you're smearing, you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. It's the malach of mimareach, but this is allowed to be done if you prepare it before Shabbos. The ispelonis al gabe makkah, and also a dressing, a bandage, a dressing that you put on another makkah. Again, it's done with cream and you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos, but if you prepare it before Shabbos, umisrapis v'hilches kolayem kulay, and it's there and it heals the person on Shabbos. So all of these cases are allowed. The Gemara will soon discuss whether this is all Beis Hillel's opinion or it's Beis Shammai's opinion. There'll be two explanations in the Gemara, as we'll see. Aval, however, you may not place kernels of flour, kernels of wheat, that is, into a mill of water that's going to go on its own the whole Shabbos, unless it does the job before Shabbos arrives. This is the only case that in this Braisa it says is forbidden. My time. What's the reason? Why is this last case different? So at this point, the Gemara is assuming this is all Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel is saying that in all the other cases it's permitted, because Beis Hillel's opinion is you can prepare something before Shabbos and let the malacha be done on Shabbos. So why in this last case does he hold that it's forbidden? Amar Rabbe, the answer is mipnei shemashmas koil, because the mill, the water mill, makes a sound, it makes a noise, and therefore Rashi says it's dishonorable for Shabbos, that during Shabbos you have this noise going on of this mill that's working a whole Shabbos or part of Shabbos. That's dishonorable for Shabbos, and that you're not allowed to do. That's Rabbe's explanation. Now this is something which is brought in Shulchan Aruch, and it's Negeya. It's actually in Shulchan Aruch there are two opinions that are brought, whether we paskin like this teretz of Rabbe. Soon we're going to see there's another teretz. So there's two opinions brought in Shulchan Aruch and the Alter Rebbe and Simon Reish Nun Beis, whether we paskin like this. The Alter Rebbe brings the first opinion that even if you're doing a malacha and it continues in Shabbos on its own and it makes a noise, it doesn't matter. But the second opinion, the Alter Rebbe says that if something is making a noise, you're not allowed to prepare it before Shabbos in a way that it's going to make a noise on Shabbos. And the Alter Rebbe says you should be machmer, like the second opinion, that not to do it unless there's a hefsid merubah. So for example, to put on a dryer to dry your clothing and it continues to work after lichtsinden, or to have a dishwasher or whatever it is and it continues to work on Shabbos, so it's going to be a problem because it's making a noise in the house on Shabbos, and it's dishonorable for Shabbos. That's a very big nafkamina halacha l'maisa from this. That's one point. But the interesting thing is, what's the halacha with an alarm clock based on this? Are you allowed to prepare an alarm clock that's going to ring on Shabbos and make some noise on Shabbos? So the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch says that preparing an alarm clock, the Alter Rebbe there describes this old-fashioned kind of an alarm clock with a bell and however it's made. You're allowed to prepare it before Shabbos, even though it's going to ring on Shabbos. Everybody knows it was prepared from before Shabbos. That's something that's allowed to be done on Shabbos. As I state in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch.
It's because it's disturbing, no?
Huh?
It's dishonorable.
But if it's clear, the chelik of the dishonor is the fact that it's going on Shabbos and it looks like you prepared it on Shabbos. But if it's something, if it's clear that it was prepared before Shabbos, it's allowed.
Air conditioned, that makes a lot of noise?
No, that's allowed on Shabbos. Huh? Yeah, okay. There's air conditioning. I mean, many other things also that's allowed. All the tatum for that. Okay, let's go weiter. But Rabbi Yosef disagrees with the teretz of Rabbi. Amal Rabbi Yosef says, Rabbi Yosef, even if it's the opinion of Beis Hillel, Rav Yosef held, Beis Hillel also holds that your kelim may not do a malacha on Shabbos. The Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, on everything I told you, you should keep on Shabbos. This is an additional pasuk besides the malacha that you're not allowed to do, and also the malacha that your behemoths are not allowed to do. There's another pasuk that it says you should keep. L'rabbis shvisas kelim. You're also not allowed to have your kelim do malacha on Shabbos. And this is even according to Beis Hillel. And that's why you're not allowed to have the mill do the work on Shabbos. Elam Rav Yosef, so therefore Rav Yosef says, the pshat in the Braisa is as follows, Mishum Shvisas Kelim. The mill can't do the work for you on Shabbos because it's a keli that's working for you on Shabbos. So now according to Rav Yosef that says, Beis Hillel islu Shvisas Kelim da'iraisa. That even Beis Hillel agrees that Kalim have to rest on Shabbos, Menatayre, Gofris Mugmar. How about the other two cases that it said in the Braisa? When you have the sulfur or the Mugmar, the incense that you're burning, that you're preparing before Shabbos and it's burning through Shabbos. My time is Sharu. Why in this Braisa did it say it's permitted? And for the Gemara, Mishum de Leika'ovid Maisa, because there's no action, there's no movement of these Kalim. The incense or the sulfur is just sitting there in the kalim, and it's the smoke or whatever, the smell comes up and does the job without anything moving. Unin shall pishtan my time misharu. How about in the Mishnah where we learned that the bundles of flax that you're allowed to place it into the oven according to Beis Hillel before Shabbos? Why is it allowed? If you're going to tell me that Beis Hillel agrees that shvisas kalim is forbidden on Shabbos, why is this allowed? And for the Gemara, again, because there's no action being done by the kalim, there's no movement there. The flax just sits there in the oven and it gets heated up and there's no movement happening. How about mitzudas chayev dogim? How about a trap that the Mishnah said that Beis Hillel says it's allowed to prepare before Shabbos? If you're going to say Beis Hillel holds you're not allowed to have kalim do malacha on Shabbos. The ka'ovid ma'isa, the traps, many of the traps, there's something that closes, something that moves, and the keli itself is moving on Shabbos. So why is that allowed? My time is sharu. And for the Gemara, we're going to have to say that Hasam Nami Belechi V'Kukri. It's talking specifically about kinds of traps that there's no movement in the traps. It just traps it without any movement. Lechi is a hook that you trap a fish. You put out a hook before Shabbos and the fish get trapped and there's no movement taking place. And Kukri is also some kind of a trap that traps animals that is wide on one end and narrow on the other end. And once the animal gets in, it can't back out and it can't get out from the other side and it's stuck there on Shabbos. The Leikovid Maisa, there's no actual movement that happens in the trap on Shabbos. This is all according to Rav Yosef. So according to Rav Yosef, Beis Hillel also agrees to the concept of Shvisas Kelim on Shabbos, but he makes a distinction between a case where there's a movement, there's a Maisa happening in the Keli, and a case where there's no Maisa happening in the Keli. So the Gemara, but Vahashta now, however, we know, Dom Ravaishi Am Ravasi. Ravaishi said in the name of Ravasi, Man Tana Shvisas Kelim Deiraisa. Who is the Tana that says that the Kelim have to rest on Shabbos Menatayre? Beishamai. Only Beishamai holds so. V'loi Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel disagrees to this whatsoever. Le Beishamai, and according to Beishamai, Ben Ka'ovid Maisa, Ben Deloi Ka'ovid Maisa, whether the Keli is, there's an action happening in the Keli, whether there's no action happening in the Keli, also. Either way, it's forbidden to prepare and allow the keli to do the malach on Shabbos. In the Beis Hillel, according to Beis Hillel, afagav de ka'ovid ma'isa, even in a case where the keli is moving on Shabbos, shari, you're allowed to prepare it before Shabbos and let it continue going on Shabbos. So now the Gemara is going to return back to the Braisa that we had before, because now according to this pshat, the Braisa before is going to go according to Beis Shammai. So now that you're saying that according to the Beis Shammai, even when a keli is doing malacha without any actual movement or action, it's still forbidden to prepare it from before Shabbos. If so, next Amud, Mugmar v'gofris, the case mentioned in the Braisa where you have the Mugmar, the incense, or the sulfur that are burning, that you prepare and they're burning through Shabbos. My time is sharu. Why is it permitted according to Beis Shammai if that Braisa is Beis Shammai? My time is sharu Beis Shammai. And for the Gemara, it's not in a keli. Hasam monach a'ara. You place it on the ground and there's no keli. If you prepare the fire before Shabbos and the smoke comes out or the smell comes out and it does the malacha on Shabbos, but there's no keli, so there's no issa of shvisas kalim. The issa of shvisas kalim is specifically that your kalim have to rest. But here it's just you just put it down on the floor and it does the job. Now the Gemara asks from other cases. If you're going to tell me that according to Beis Shammai, you can't have any malacha done in kalim, even if it's prepared from before Shabbos, there's a few cases that are very common that people do all the time, and there's really no way out. And how, according to Beis Shammai, would these be allowed? Gigis. The barrels that are used for preparing the beer. So Rashi says the barley or whatever the ingredients has to be used that you're soaking in the beer in the barrels to prepare beer has to go over a Shabbos. Has to at least 8 days or even longer. So that's something that goes over Shabbos. So how could that happen? It's in a keli. How could that happen over Shabbos? Ner. How about the most basic things? To light a lamp in a keli, whatever you put in oil and the wick in a keli. And the keli is burning and it's being used to burn a fire on Shabbos. Kedeira, to place a pot on the fire on Shabbos. Shpud, if you have a spit that's used to broil or roast on Shabbos. My time is short of Beis Shammai. How in any of these cases would this be permitted on Shabbos? And for the Gemara, the mafkiluhu afkuri. The reason is, right before Shabbos, according to Beis Shammai, he has to be mafkir all these kalim, they don't belong to him. And even though usually when you mafkir something, you have to say it to 3 people. I'm being mafkir these kalim. It has to be done a proper hefker. Here Taisva says they were makel, and you don't have to make a proper hefker. Even if you just say hefker, for you to between yourself, it becomes hefker. And the Rashba says actually even more than this, that the hefker bezin hefker. Yes, this is the only way it's going to be mutter to be done on Shabbos. So mitzad the bezdin, they're going to make it hefker automatically in order for it to be able to be done on Shabbos. Sagt the Gemara weiter, man Tana la the Tana Rabbanon. Who is the Tana of the following Braise? Loi tamala isha kedeira asasias v'turmisen. A woman should not fill a pot with asasias and turmisen, which are various types of beans that have to cook a very, very long time, over 24 hours. So she fills up a pot before Shabbos, that it should cook over Shabbos, and then v'taniach l'techa tana, she puts it in the oven, erev Shabbos, im chashecha, right before Shabbos when it gets dark, v'im nasnan. And so you're not allowed, so the Braisa says you're not allowed to let this cook over Shabbos and then use it right after Shabbos. V'im nasnon, and if she did go ahead and do this, to put it in right before Shabbos and wants to then use it right after Shabbos, l'motzei Shabbos asurin b'chdei sheyasu. Motzei Shabbos, you're going to have to wait as long as it took for it to be prepared. So let's say it took 24 hours, you're going to have to wait another 24 hours. A similar thing the Braisa says, a baker should not fill up before Shabbos a barrel of water and prepare it to place it into the oven right before Shabbos. So you should have the water, hot water, available for him to cook or to bake right after Shabbos. If he did so, Matzah Shabbos, it'll be forbidden to use it as long as it took for this to be heated, to be boiled or heated, whatever it is. So, whose opinion is this? Who says you're not allowed to place it into the oven before Shabbos and it should cook over Shabbos? Leime Beis Shammai. Shall we say that this is all the opinion of Beis Shammai? According to Beis Shammai, it's an issue if your keli is doing a malacha on Shabbos. According to the Beis Hillel, it's not an issue. V'loi Beis Hillel, no, and that does not follow Beis Hillel's opinion. And for the Gemara, no. In these cases, even Beis Hillel would agree that this is a problem for a completely different reason. What's the problem? So here there's a nugzeire of shema yechate begecholim. The person may come and play around with the coals to intensify the fire, to help it cook faster. So if you leave this thing to cook over Shabbos, whether it's the water, whether it's the beans, the person might come to be mechate with the coals, to stir the coals on Shabbos. Okay, so this is a new gzeira which we're going to learn in Metzshem Ba'arichis later in the Perek of Kira, where it talks about how the halachas, which in today's day and age is when you put a blech in order for a person not to come to play around with the fire on Shabbos, to stir the coals or to fix the gas range on Shabbos and so on. So this is the first source over here in Shabbos where the Gemara mentions this, that even according to the Beis Hillel, you can't have a pot on the fire or in the oven over Shabbos because you might come to stir the coals. If so, going back to the brayso that it said before, mugmer v'gofris nami. In the case where you have the incense or the sulfur that we said is permitted to allow it to go over Shabbos, sanami ligzar. Why don't we have the same gezeda that you might come to play around, you might come to stir the fire that is there? And for the Gemara, over there we're not afraid that he's going to stir the coals. The machsi, because if he does, Salik buhu kutre, it's going to be too much of a smoke, v'kashilahu, and it's not going to be good, not for the clothing and not for the silver that he's trying to make the black decorations on it. So therefore, there's no chash that is going to come and stir the coals on Shabbos. How about unin shel pishton? The bundles of flax that you place into the oven. Nami ligzar. How about according to Beis Hillel, that's allowed. You could put it before Shabbos into the oven. So why not make the same gzeira that he might stir the coals on Shabbos? And for the Gemara, Hassam, in that case, kivin the kashilahu zike, since the wind that would enter into the oven and cools off the fire or cools off the bundles of flax, it's not good for the process of the flax that you're trying to heat it up in the oven. So he's not going to open up the oven b'chlal. How about the other case that was mentioned in the Mishnah? Tzemer liyoda, the tzemer that you place into the vat. The wool that you place into the vat, ligzar, you should also make a gzeira that he might come and stir the coals. Shmuel, and so Shmuel now answers and explains, here we're going to have to say, the Mishnah is talking about biyoda akura. It's a vat that was removed from the fire. So he's not going to stir the coals. Fragt the Gemara, there's still another issur of bishul on Shabbos. V'neichesh sheme megisba. Even after it's off the fire, but if it's still hot and you mix it on Shabbos, so that's also bishul according to Rashi. So then why are we not concerned about that? And for the Gemara ba'akura, it's removed from the fire, v'toicha, and it's also insulated. It's also covered and insulated that you can't easily open it up. So we're not going to be geyser that the person will forget and go and open it up on Shabbos. That we're not geyser. But otherwise, according to Beis Hillel, he would agree that there's an issue of shama yachata. Sagt die Gemara weiter, now that you're saying that there's an issue that a person is going to stir the coals on Shabbos, if you have a pot that has raw foods that you put on the fire right before Shabbos, you're allowed to put it on the fire in the oven right before Shabbos. My timer, what's the reason? Why are we not afraid that he's going to stir the coals? Since it's not ready, it's not roy to eat at night, he removes his mind of it, and he's not going to come to stir the coals before Shabbos, and that it should cook on Shabbos, and it's going to cook on its own well overnight. Sorry again. That's the way it's at. He's not going to come to stir the coals on Shabbos. Okay, this is something which is very negay, la halacha today. Anytime you have, if you put a raw foods right before Shabbos, so you theoretically you don't need a blech. Correct? You don't need a blech before Shabbos. As we're going to see from right over here, this is one case where you don't need a blech. If you're going to put the foods raw right before Shabbos, but this is a little bit of an issue because a mamish has to be 100% raw. So it has to be like right before Shkia, literally, and it's sort of difficult to be able to do that.
Does it have to be machal ben dushai?
1 second, no. If it's put on the fire, then it's 100% raw. So because we see the person is not planning on eating it until the next morning, and the next morning it's going to be already cooked, and he's not going to be stirring the fire, he's not worried because it's going to go until the next morning, so you're allowed to put that up right before Shabbos. That's one exception. Let's go to the next case. Now, ubashil, if it's food that you placed on the fire and it's already cooked, And here there's a machlokes, and this machlokes we'll see later in Perek Kira, but Rashi and Tosfos quote here the machlokes. What's the pshat when it says bashal? It's already cooked. Either it's already cooked fully, that's the shitta that Rashi brings. Tosfos brings the other opinion, which is more lenient, even if it's cooked k'maichel ben drasai, which is either half cooked or a third cooked. There's a machlokes about that. So shapir dami, that's also allowed to be put on the fire on Shabbos since it's cooked partially or fully. So we're not afraid that the person is going to stir the coals on Shabbos. Bashil v'loy bashil aser. But if it's food that is not fully cooked, according to Rashi or according to Tosfos, it's cooked less than maichel ben drasai, less than a third or less than a half. So then that's the case where we are concerned that the person might play around. He might stir the coals on Shabbos. Okay, another case that's connected to the previous thing that we said, that a raw food in a pot is allowed to be placed right before Shabbos because he's not thinking about it until tomorrow. If you have a pot that's partially cooked and it's a problem without a blech, he might stir it on Shabbos, but he throws in one piece of meat or a piece of bone, a piece of meat that's totally raw, shapir dami. Even just one piece of meat inside, that's enough to make it permitted to be able to put it on the fire without a blech. Okay, and this is all brought la'alacha l'maisa shulchan aruch. Once a person places one piece of meat into the pot that's totally raw, we see that he's not planning on using the food in this pot for tonight. He's going to use it for tomorrow, for a cholent for tomorrow, and therefore you're allowed to put it on the fire without a blech. Today's day and age, in most cases, for the purpose of leaving the pot in the fire on Shabbos, it's not necessary to have a blech, because in most cases, in most households, it's already cooked k'maichel ben drasai. If you're putting it on the fire mamish raw right before Shabbos, again you don't need a blech. Because if it's 100% raw, the person is not thinking about it until tomorrow and not afraid that he's going to stir the flame of the fire. If you put it 10 minutes before Shabbos and it's not cooked k'maichel ben drasai and it's partially cooked, that's when you need a blech to be able to keep it on the fire for Shabbos. Right? So it says in Paiskim, the best thing is when you put the fire, the cholent on the fire, you should have it cooked before Shabbos, and then it makes it more heter that it won't come to stir it on Shabbos.
Even though there's a blech.
Oh, obviously with a blech it's okay. I'm just saying it says in the Paiskim anyways, the best idea is to have it cooked before Shabbos. Now just to mention another thing, and we'll see this in Mitzvah Shem in the next Perek, in Perek Kira, that there's another purpose of having a blech on Shabbos. And that's for the halacha of chazara. If you take off the cholent and you want to take out some cholent, you didn't yet place it down on the counter, and then you want to put it back, you're never allowed to put it back directly on the fire itself. You're only allowed to put it back on a blech. So that's another purpose of having a blech. So that's a different halacha, as we'll see later in Mitzvah Shem in the next Perek. In 2 prakim from now, actually. Okay, let's continue the Gemara inside. Now another halacha, now based on what we said before, kol midi de koshile zike, anything that the wind is not good for it, if you uncover it, loy megalale, so a person will not uncover it, right? The Gemara said this before, b'negayah to the bundles of flax that are in the oven on Shabbos, that we're not afraid that he's going to stir the coals because he's not going to want to uncover it. So hai bisre de gadye visharik. So the meat that comes from a goat, which is softer meat, and visharik, and you also insulated and closed the oven. Shapir dami, that's okay, because the person is not going to come to open it up to stir the coals. The barche, however, if it's tougher meat, which comes from a ram, v'loy sharik, and the oven is not insulated, Osir, that's forbidden, because the person doesn't mind uncovering the oven and it's not going to ruin the meat, then he might stir the coals on Shabbos. How about a case in between? The gadye v'loy sharik, a case of softer meat of a goat, and the oven is not sealed, and the barche visharik, or you have the case of the ram meat, which is tougher meat, but visharik, but the oven is sealed. Rav Ashi shari. So in each one of these cases, you have one thing that's stopping the person of stirring it, either because it's goat meat and he doesn't want to open up the oven, or even if it's ram meat and it's tougher meat, but sharik, the oven is insulated, it's sealed. So Rav Ashi shari, Rav Ashi says just with one advantage here, it's going to be good enough, it's permitted to do it on Shabbos. But Rav Yirmi Medifta Aser. And Rav Yirmi Medifta says it's still forbidden. Rav Ashi the Shari, according to Rav Ashi, that says that this is permitted. But we learned later in the Mishnah, we're going to learn this tomorrow on Daf Yutes Amud Beis, or maybe the next day, it's in the bottom of Daf Yutes Amud Beis. Ein soilem basa batzel ubeitzem. You cannot soilen, you cannot roast meat, an egg, or onions on Shabbos. El kadesha yitzoilem b'bayid yayim. Only if it's roasted from before Shabbos, not to be done on Shabbos, because you might come to stir the coals. So one of the things that it says over here is meat. It says you're not allowed to do this, but Rav Ashi says that it's permitted. So according to Rav Ashi, and for the Gemara, we're going to have to say, Hasam de barcha v'loy sharik. That Mishnah is talking about tough meat, and the oven is not insulated, and therefore there's nothing reminding a person, there's nothing stopping a person of going and stirring the coals. Ikadamri, there are others that said the machlokes between Rav Ashi and Rav Yirmi and Medifti differently. The gadya, when you have soft meat from a goat, bein sharik, whether the oven is insulated, it's sealed, bein loy sharik, whether it's not sealed, shapedami. It's not a problem. The person will not open the oven because it's going to ruin the meat. The barcha, if it's tougher meat from a ram, nami also, visharik, shapedami. So even though this is meat from a ram, which a person does not mind opening, the wind does not ruin the meat. But if it's sealed, shapedami, that's okay. Ki pligi, the only case where they argued was the barcha v'loy sharik. If it's tougher meat and the oven is not sealed either, the Rav Ashi shari, Rav Ashi says that it's still permitted to place it into the oven on Shabbos, and we're not afraid that he's going to stir the coals. Rav Yirmi Medifte aser, and Rav Yirmi Medifte says that in this case it's aser. So the Gemara now brings again for the Rav Ashi, according to Rav Ashi, the Mishnah we quoted before, the Shari, he says it's permitted. Ein tzaylim basar, batzel, ubeitza, ela kadeshi yitzulim mibayid yaim. You can't roast meat, an egg, or an onion or an egg, unless it's done before Shabbos. What's the problem? So we see there is a problem that you might come to stir the coals. But Rav Ashi says that you're allowed to place the meat into the oven, even if it's a ram meat, and even if the oven is not sealed, because we're not afraid that he's going to stir the coals on Shabbos. So why does the Mishnah say that it's not forbidden, that it's forbidden? And for the Gemara, Hasam bibisra agumri. Over there, it's talking about meat that you're putting on coals. It's open, it's exposed, it's on coals. It's like a barbecue that you're barbecuing on the coals, and therefore that's mamish exposed. The person can see it. There's a much bigger concern that the person is going to stir it on Shabbos. Amar Ravina. So Ravina said, "Hi kara chaya. If you have raw zucchini, raw, I believe that's what it is, right? Squash. Okay. Shapir dami. That you're allowed to place in the oven right before Shabbos. Kivin the kashi lezika. Again, for the same reason, the wind is going to ruin it if you open up the oven. Kibisra the gadya dami. It's similar to the meat that comes from a goat that the person does not want to open the oven on Shabbos because it ruins it." Okay, this ends this chelek. Now this whole Indian that we spoke about over here is going to come back again in Perek Kira. I'm going to go through it again over there, maybe mention some more halacha l'maisa that it says in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Beis Shammai yoimrim ein moichrin. Beis Shammai said you're not allowed to sell to a guy right before Shabbos, as long as he can't bring it home early enough before Shabbos. Tana Rabbana Beis Shammai yoimrim la'yim karadm cheftzeh l'nochri. You're not allowed to sell him any items on Friday afternoon. V'lo yishalenu. You're not allowed to even lend him something to use. V'lo yalvenu. You're not allowed to lend him any items. El Yalvenu is when he returns to you something else that's equivalent to it. You're not allowed to give him a gift, any items right before Shabbos. Unless he can carry it home to his house before Shabbos arrives. Otherwise, as I said in the Mishnah, it looks like that you're appointing him as your shliach to go and do this malacha for you on Shabbos. Beis Hillel says, as long as he can reach to his city where he lives in, even if he doesn't reach to his house, but he reaches to the wall of the city where he lives in, so that's enough that it says that he arrived there before Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva says, As long as he can leave your house before Shabbos, you can sell him something right before Shabbos, give him a gift right before Shabbos, as long as he's going to leave your house right before Shabbos. Amar Rav Yosef bar Yehuda, so Rav Yosef bar Yehuda said, Hein hein divrei Rav Akiva, hein hein divrei Beis Hillel. Rav Akiva was not coming to argue with Beis Hillel. Rav Akiva was coming to explain the opinion of Beis Hillel. The opinion of Beis Hillel was quoted that even he agrees that the guy has to arrive to the city where he lives in. Rabbi Akiva is saying, no, according to Beis Hillel, he doesn't have to go anywhere. Rabbi Akiva came to explain the words of Beis Hillel, that as long as the guy leaves your house right before Shabbos, you're able to sell it to him right before Shabbos, and it doesn't matter. And this is the halacha l'maisa, of course, the way it's brought in Shulchan Aruch and the Alter Rebbe, Simmeration and Beis, that we pass on like the opinion of Beis Hillel. According to Rabbi Akiva, you can sell anything to a guy right before Shabbos, as long as he leaves your house before Shabbos. Which means, if he's selling something to a guy right before Shabbos and he wants to store it in your house on Shabbos, then he's going to come pick it up on Shabbos, that's a problem, because he's not leaving your premises before Shabbos begins. As long as you sell it to him and he leaves your premises before Shabbos begins, it's not a problem.
What about giving to mail carrier?
A mail carrier before Shabbos? Oh, the Gemara is going to discuss it. The Gemara is going to discuss this. We'll see in Mitzvah Shem. Yeah, there's a whole simon of Shulchan Aruch about that, about the mail carrier. Yeah, we're going to see those halachas. Mitzvah Shem. Okay, thank you for joining us for today's learning. And again, atzlach in everything you do. And everyone should be healthy and refuah shlema for those that need refuah shlema, and Yeshua and Gola for the entire Klal Yisrael.
Amen.
Okay.